Hey guys, Josh Kasparic here. And normally in the offense in snap, I take a look at plays from the previous game, I post clips, and I walk you through what happens. But I wanted to take a bit of a different approach here, specifically because without the ability to cut all 22 clips for you guys, this last game would be really hard to illustrate. And I just noticed that because of the offensive struggles, a lot of people are off the bandwagon. They don't know why it isn't easier for us to play offense. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this. I wanted to set a little perspective if I can, and I wanted to ask you guys a couple of questions. So if you'll bear with me, there's a little bit I want to get to. So let's first talk about mentality. I notice a lot when fans talk about offense being easy or, more consistent or free flowing. They think that means more points. A great offense is like Tom Brady or Peyton Manning. People, they want to see 30 points a week and, just easier wins offensively where things look smooth. And I have a bit of a shocking revelation. Look, offense in this league isn't easy. Very rarely do you have teams put up, even championship teams, put up maybe more than 25 or 26 points per game, year in and year out. I mean, there's rarities that stand out that put up a lot of points, like the 1998 Vikings and the St. Louis Rams when they were the greatest show on turf. But I wanted to go because what people are looking at when they're talking about the offense is the offense has to be better. For this to be a dynasty, for this to be a consistent championship team, the offense has to be better. There just has to be more firepower from it. And I definitely agree that this current season has created a need for more offense. But I'm going to tell you that from a fundamental standpoint, when looking at dynasties, even the San Francisco 49ers, who I will use as the prime example of a dynasty that Seattle hopes to model itself after, with Pete Carroll idolizing a lot of what Bill Walsh put together. Even with that team, even with their 4 Super Bowl championships, they never scored 30 points a game. In fact, their best season was 28 points a game. And they had like 5 or 6 blowouts that season that kind of skewed the numbers. So I went back to when San Francisco won its original Super Bowl title in 1981. They scored exactly 22 points per game in 1981. They didn't get back to the Super Bowl until 84, and then they scored 27 points per game. I'm rounding down, I'm using the numbers from Pro Football Reference, but there's like a 0.4 points and things like that. So I'm just rounding the numbers. But then you go to 88 when they won just 10 games. And they scored just 23 points a game. And then in 1989, they certainly peaked and scored 28 points per game. But again, it was more like they had some blowouts, the numbers were skewed. So I would say, on average, if you look at those teams, they probably, even out to about 24 points per game, 3 touchdowns and a field goal per game. And I needed to point this out because people are just, people are frustrated. They want their Mannings and their Brady offenses, and they want it to look just easy, a hot knife through butter. And something Pete Carroll said stuck with me, and it was, I know people want things to be easy, but it's not easy. It's a battle out there every week, so suck it up. That's what he said. And I think to a large extent, that's what we as fans need to do. But also, we need to realize that this offense is extremely young at key positions. You know, your best receiver is Doug Baldwin right now, but that's because he's been in the offense for, you know, since 2011. He's been with Daryl Bevell since 2011. None of the other receivers have shared that much time with Daryl Bevell. Um, on the field, playing games, catching passes. Luke Wilson isn't as experienced. You lose a majority of experience when Sidney Rice retires. You lose a lot of experience with Zach Miller going out. Just in some simpler things that you could sort of rely on from him as a sort of a pass catcher short, or some intermediate yardage. I think people have this idea that offenses, they're just better if you have a good quarterback. But as I've expressed before, and maybe I'm rambling a little bit, I apologize. Quarterbacks and receivers are in a symbiotic relationship. What we saw this last week, and then against the Cowboys also, was an inability for the QB and the receiver to connect in tighter coverage, where the receiver has to work to open space and the quarterback has to be able to find him in that space. A perfect example of this is the pass that is thrown to Doug Baldwin, where Russell Wilson actually directs him to open space against the Raiders. And this is just something that, Matt Hasselbeck could do with a Bobby Ingram or a Darrell Jackson, or even to an extent, like a Tula Mealy, who was a veteran. We could even pull up the old Seahawks teams that were top flight under Mike Holmgren. A lot of these guys had years and years of experience before it finally clicked and they started scoring and consistently moving a ball at a high level against almost every team they face. They might have 2 or 3 hiccups a year where, the offense struggled a little bit, but for a majority of that time, that experienced team that came into 2003 and really didn't fall apart until, the final pieces left in 2007 was all about experience. Max Strong in 2003 had been in the offense of Mike Holmgren since '99. Matt Hasselbeck came over after being drafted by the Packers and being in a similar system for a number of years. You look at the experience of that team when it finally clicked, and you're looking at a lot of players with 3 and 4 years under their belt with a lot of ability to adjust plays and not necessarily create backyard football, but just the ability to make subtle adjustments based on the defenses they were getting. So I just think that right now we're still suffering from a major lack of experience. The loss of Sidney Rice, the loss of Zach Miller, that your only real experienced receiver in this offense is now Doug Baldwin. And so I think while things will be easier, going forward, certainly, especially I think against San Francisco, there's just things you're going to be able to take advantage of. I would expect some struggles to continue while they try to figure out how to make this connection work, how to make these receivers understand things, how to make the quarterback, feel more comfortable and more fluid in the system. One of the other things we could discuss countless times is the one thing we can't know, which is how much is Russell Wilson taking control of this offense. What I mean is audibles, checks, different checks into better plays when he reads the defense. Uh, pre-snap reads, this type of stuff. It's a little tough to gauge without knowing more information, but I think that's one thing to consider too. Is he's in just his third year in this offense, and you put a bunch of young receivers around him or inexperienced ones in the offense, and you're just bound to have a little more struggle than if you had a guy that was a 6 or 7 year veteran, like Matt Hasselbeck was by '05, where you could sit there and put young guys in the receiver position because your main engine was your running game. I mean, there's just this huge, I think, lack of understanding of what's going on, and that's understandable. But there's this huge just want of just ease of winning, but not just the ease of it. The consistency of a good drive. 2 or 3 good drives a half. That end in a good score. A touchdown and a field goal. Give us something like that in the first 2 drives, and we'll feel a little bit better about the offense. So, I'm just wondering if you guys are willing to accept that maybe this offense isn't good enough to score maybe more than 23 points a game, or where you see the possibility of this offense maybe scoring more or scoring less. Um, when I look at this team specifically, I see a lot of just inexperience in the receiver core. I see a lot of disappointment from Luke Wilson specifically. Ability to run routes, but an inability to finish. Some of those catches last week were tough. By just from a standpoint of looking at the future of this team, it's got to be growth. It's got to be one game at a time. We can't spin it forward. It's got to be little plays, man. It's got to be, every catch to Norwood is important. Every catch to Richardson is important. The fall off of Jermaine Kearse's ability to make big plays, just straight up beating man coverage has disappeared for him. He made a lot of big plays in one-on-one situations last year, and he's just not making them right now. And so, I mean, where would you want to go to start fixing this offense? Where would you start? Would it be the receiver core? Would you go out and get some experience? A more experienced receiver in this style of offense? Would you go and try to retool the running game? I mean, where does this explosiveness come from? I think that's what we need to discuss. Is if the Seahawks are going to go from 22, 23 points a game to that 28 points a game that the 49ers scored, in their peak offensive year in 1989, in terms of their final championship as a true dynasty. Where does that come from? Where do we get it? Let's play armchair GM a little bit. Let's really talk about where this offense can go to find stuff. Is it Christian Michael? Is it Robert Turbin? Specifically, one thing I would eliminate is empty back sets. That's my own personal approach. I would probably put Robert Turbin in more pass obvious situations. I would still run the ball with him. You don't want a definite tell when you do that. But Robert Turbin out of the backfield is a heck of a pass catcher with great athleticism if he keeps his balance and can beat, and he beats a one-on-one tackle most of the time in those situations. So, I mean, my view is that your explosiveness could come from the running back position. Because when San Francisco put up its 28 points per game, its second leading receiver on that team was actually the fullback, Tom Rathman. So I think one of the things you could do instantly, and this is just my opinion, is throw to the back out of the backfield. Let that defense stretch itself out, guard Russell Wilson's deep ball, and just pull a lot more dump offs and scheme it so that you can get that to work for you. If you have, defenders coming down to block that and then beat the deep pass. Okay? So, I just, sorry if this is a little rambly, but I would like to get your opinion on it. Where does the team go from here offensively? And when do we hear something like this?
Tiger. 322 Y stick.
Matt Hasselbeck had found the Midas touch. As the Seahawks entered the stretch run, the quarterback derided as Mr. August proved to be a man for all seasons.
Hasselbeck pumping right, throwing left, Jackson in stride to the 5, to the end zone. Touchdown!
Hasselbeck led the entire NFC in completion percentage.
And it's just a perfect throw by Matt Hasselbeck.
His 87.8 passer rating was second best in the NFC.
Hasselbeck rainbowing the right side to the end zone. Touchdown Seahawks!
Better than Michael Vick. Better than Jeff Garcia. Better than Brett Favre. Better than Donovan McNabb.
Hasselbeck backing up, throwing in the middle of the end zone. Touchdown! Corin Robinson!
In barely half a season, he gunned for more than 3,000 yards. And most of that real estate was in Mr. Robinson's neighborhood.
Hasselbeck throwing to the end zone. Leaping catch, Robinson! Touchdown Seahawks!
Corin Robinson broke out as Holmgren's home run threat with more than 1,200 receiving yards and 78 catches.
Robinson responds with a great run after the catch. Leaping catch is made. Corin Robinson!
Darrell Jackson showed plenty of moxie, battling back from a concussion to give secondaries fits with 62 catches and 4 touchdowns.
Looking for the end zone. Jackson leaping into the end zone. Touchdown Seahawks!
Slotman Bobby Ingram was one of football's best clutch receivers. 43 of his 50 catches resulted in first down.
Passes caught by Ingram for the first down.
Itulamili enjoyed the finest season of his career, while former Husky Jeremy Stevens was the most productive rookie tight end in franchise history.
Hasselbeck down the middle, passes caught for the touchdown. Jeremy Stevens.
Over the last 6 weeks of the season, the Seahawks had the NFL's #1 offense, eclipsing 400 yards 5 times and throttling the opposition.
Hasselbeck throwing to the end zone. Leaping catch, Robinson. I felt like I was watching surgery the way the offense just moved right down the field.
You guys are pretty good.